You know, friends, when you watch a willful slave offer up their rights and beg for the government, federal government, state government, to take their rights, sometimes you figure those people get what they deserve. The problem is it drags everybody else down with them and tries to remove all the constitutional rights that everyone else has. So even though you're trying to give your rights up, unfortunately, if you're in any kind of a position of authority, it takes everybody else's with it. You'll remember the nut job in Philadelphia who killed people, had an AR-15 and a handgun, and they had what appeared to be, I think it was just a bulletproof vest casing, like the plate carrier. I don't think they actually had any body armor on them. But whenever they got arrested, they told the police officers, good job, and pretty much alluded to the fact that they were making their murderous spree in the name of gun control to show that guns needed to be controlled. Yeah, and the mayor, being a gun control guy himself, I guess he doesn't realize that the person that he's talking about in this video is actually on his side.
The question I have is, where does a person like this get an AR-15? Where does a person like this get a semi-automatic handgun? Where does a person like this buy Kevlar vest?
First of all, nice little Ukraine slave pin you got right there. Toeing the company line. Looks really good on you. I can tell where you're wanting to go. A little bit higher up, maybe cabinet position somewhere else. Very nice look. Anti-gun, gun control, and Ukraine. Good on you. But your question about where they get the guns from. Where does a person like this get an AR-15? Well, a person like this gets an AR-15 at a gun store because they have a constitutional right to purchase that. Because since you folks don't want to deem a person like this mentally defective and you want to celebrate these people, they don't have anything that precludes them from purchasing a firearm and filling out a 4473 and passing it. Until you guys recognize the mental deficiency that they have, they'll always pass a background check. So they'll always get an AR-15 and they'll always get the handgun you speak of. Now, you're saying, where do they get a Kevlar vest? I can tell you're a fan of Joe Biden. Joe Biden loves that whole Kevlar vest phrase. Just, oh, do the deer have Kevlar vests? Cute, funny. This guy didn't have a Kevlar vest, right? Again, maybe he had a flak jacket, maybe he had a plate carrier, but from everything I've read, he had what would resemble a tactical vest, but no plates. And what harm are plates? What if the guy did have this? You can't immediately associate every single thing that this guy owned and say that now it should be outlawed simply because your nutbag friend decided to kill a bunch of people. What if he was wearing Nikes? Do we need to outlaw those now? How can you associate some kind of a tactical vest with being the leanings of what a person who's going to kill a bunch of people indiscriminately would wear as a mass shooter? That's absolutely stupid. You're now going to say that people shouldn't be allowed to have tactical vests, plate carriers, because that might mean that they're the next mass killer. These are defensive things. Are you next going to say that somebody can't go out and buy a motorcycle helmet because they're looking for their own safety? What if this guy had worn a motorcycle helmet? Now no one can have a motorcycle helmet because he used one while he was committing a crime? Let's face it, the guy was committing a crime. You have to realize that this mind went somewhere and decided to kill a crime, and everything else that this whack job was wearing or had on them just came along for the ride. It didn't contribute to the crime, it came along for the ride.
This country needs to re-examine its conscience when it comes to Congress or the state legislature and try to figure out how we get these guns out of these people's hands.
Again, you have to acknowledge that you're okay with nutbags having firearms, because that's what you're saying when you do this. You're sitting back here scratching your head wondering what could have gone wrong whenever I'm telling you what went wrong. You are dismissing the mental instability of a person who decided to kill a bunch of people. As long as you try to normalize that, you'll never fix the problem. And buddy, let me explain something to you. My conscience is squeaky clean and fine. I live it myself. I sleep really good at night, knowing that I advocate for the gun rights of every single honest, law-abiding American in this country. I sleep really good. So believe me, buddy, my conscience ain't hurting one bit.
My understanding, I don't know how many more guns he had. The parent had a stockpile of guns in his house in addition.
Yeah, here we go again. This is funny. When people outside the normal gun culture talk about a stockpile or a cache of guns, it's usually 2 or 3 guns and about 100 rounds of ammo scares the bejesus out of people. Oh my God, he had 100 rounds. I don't know anyone who owns firearms in my area in the South who has only 100 rounds. And when he talks about a stockpile of guns, I would be willing to bet that every person I know that owns firearms would have what would be considered, in this douchebag's eyes, a stockpile of guns.
We should try to figure out we will figure out where he got those weapons, and that gun dealer or that gun show should be sued till they're out of business. And it's just ridiculous. And I think every family member of someone who died or was injured in this incident should get together with a big law firm and take these gun dealers down.
Again, wanting to figure out where a person got their guns. First of all, they again were perfectly okay with purchasing firearms. You're not a criminal until you break a law. So until this person aimed that gun at the first victim and pulled the trigger, guys, they were not a criminal. They simply weren't. We have to accept that fact. So does this idiot right here. You have to realize that you can't have pre-crimes or thought crimes. You can't predetermine what a crime might be and automatically disarm people because you think they might commit a crime. Until this nutbag pulled the trigger the first time on the first person, they had committed no crimes, and every reason why they had purchased a firearm was perfectly legit and legal and acceptable according to the Second Amendment and your God-given rights. But wanting to threaten to sue gun companies, a gun show, a gun store, because they followed a federal form. Guys, these FFLs would have followed everything that the federal government dishes out to them, including the ATF, and made this person follow through with that. Now, if they purchased the gun out of the back of a trunk, are you going to try to sue those guys? I'm curious. He's sitting here talking like the assumption is that somebody legitimately sold this nutbag, this firearm, right? That's what he's saying. He's talking about gun shows, which are legitimate, gun stores, and a gun company. Those are all legitimate operations. So he's making the assumption that this person filled out a 4473. But he's also assuming that they shouldn't have been allowed to take that firearm. That would have been violating the Second Amendment. That would have been violating this person's constitutional rights. Would this guy have been up here screaming that somehow someone had had their constitutional rights taken away from them if no crime had ever been committed? This is a protected class that this person is trying to stand up for. So I wonder where he would have been in that case. And on the other hand, again, if this gun was sold to this person illegally out the trunk of a car, stolen gun serial numbers ripped off of it, whichever, would this guy still be talking as tough as he is and saying we need to go after who sold the gun to this nutbag? I doubt he would have, because he'd be worried about getting reelected, and that ain't going to play in his campaign speech.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's